We need to answer the question, is there a climate crisis or not? Or at least North Sydney Council needs to answer that question after telling EV drivers they can't run power cords across the footpath to charge their vehicles. They say it's a trip hazard. Well, let me ask you this. What's worse, tripping on a cord and grazing your knee or dying due to global boiling? Why do North Sydney Council hate the planet? EV owners, if we're honest, are on the front line of the battle against climate change. But environmentally conscious drivers like North Sydney resident John Slater have been threatened with $300 fines because, unable to park his car in his own driveway, he has to run an extension cord across the footpath to charge it. Now, have a look at his car and the cord that he ran across the path. I think we've got an image of it that shows John Slater went to quite a bit of effort. He's taped the cord down on the footpath so no one's going to trip over it. But then, of course, he got a letter from the council saying if he dares to do that again, he'll receive a $300 fine. Well, John was pretty astonished by this. In fact, he told the Daily Telegraph, "I was astonished. We were only charging at night and we live in a very quiet street with barely any pedestrian traffic after 6 p.m. And we used a black covering on the cord so it wasn't a trip hazard." And then he says this, which I think is the killer line. He says, "We have a climate emergency, but the council is instead more worried about public liability and being sued." Great point, John Slater. Tripping hazards will be the least of our problems when Sydney is overrun by rising sea levels because councils won't allow EV drivers, Joe,
that is absolutely
to charge
correct,
their cars.
Yes, that's right. Basically, North Sydney Council is responsible for the death of the planet and the end of human civilisation as we know it. I hope you're proud of yourselves. I wonder if this is why Kylia Tink's seat got redistributed in the latest Australian Electoral Commission shake-up of the boundaries, because, of course, she was the Teal member for North Sydney, but no longer, because North Sydney no longer exists as an electorate, which, again, is an early warning system for what's going to happen to the entire planet, because they're not letting this up. But they're not, and they're not the first council to do it either. There was another council, I think it might have been Northern Beaches, I don't want to slag them off, but there was another council that said this. This has been going on and on and on, and no one's got a solution for it. What do you do if you don't have a driveway?
Well, it's about 30%, Liz, I think, of Sydney residents who don't have a driveway where they can park their car. So the government pushing everybody into EVs, they're yet to provide a solution to how people are going to charge these things.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to feel for this guy, John Slater, because the whole article, he sounds like such an earnest soul, right?
Yeah.
He's got solar panels. He mentions that. He's done everything the government asked him to. He got the solar panels. Now he's going to be charged for exporting excess energy during the day when solar panels make the most energy, and he's at work, so he can't use any of it. But thank you, John. He's got the EV because the government told him to. Yeah. Maybe he was subsidised, maybe he wasn't, but he genuinely wants to save the planet. So he got that. He wants to charge it at home because it's 42 cents less per kilowatt, 8 cents at home, 50 cents if he goes to one of those public pumps and waits for hours in a line, finally gets there, fuels up that way. So it's much cheaper for him this way as well. He spent $1,000 rather on all his equipment, the cord, the tarp, making sure no one will trip. And someone still dobbed him on into the very government, and he turns around, earnest John, and says, "I'm so astonished. John, buddy, have you figured out yet? It's not about saving the planet. Come on, think with me here. Think really hard."
I'm impressed North Sydney Council have got rangers after 10 p.m. at night patrolling footpaths, taking photos
clearly
of
it wasn't
cords.
a ranger. That's the just almost the most disturbing thing about this story, because he was
like
absolutely
was it a neighbour who took the photo?
That's how councils work. It's not a
okay.
ranger, and he said himself he lives in a very quiet area. So rangers aren't checking out like parking tickets or anything like that in a really quiet area. One of his neighbours has spotted the tarp, spotted the... I used to be a city councillor. This is how it always works. Nancy next door picking up the phone, being like, "Are you aware?" And now poor John, despite all his efforts, is still getting
I know, and I think when you said, and we know he's got solar panels, it reminded me of the old joke about, how do you know if someone's vegan? They'll tell you.
How do you know someone does CrossFit? They put it on Instagram.
Solar panels, they'll tell you.
Made it into the article.
He's so selfless because even despite having all the solar panels and not being able to, not being able to exploit it because he's at work during the day, he's still charging his EV at night. So he's actually handing this money directly over to the government, over to Ausgrid and the suppliers. And also, I can't help but wonder, why would you make it a requirement it is an effective de facto requirement whether you make it one or not. But you're saying, well, you can't have any cords on the footpath, so you can only charge your car at home if you have a garage or a driveway on site on your property. When at the same time we constantly get all these studies showing that houses with the biggest land geographical footprint are also the biggest producers of carbon. They're also the biggest producer of carbon dioxide, so they're also the worst for the environment. So you are basically saying that to own an electric vehicle, you have to have a property that produces more CO2.
Right.
We're through the looking glass here, people. And I'm a supporter. I'm on John's side. But again, there is just no force on Earth, including the actual prospective end of the Earth itself, more powerful than petty bureaucracy.
There you go.
Well, you'd think if there was a climate crisis, the council would throw people like John Slater a bone.
It wins the day.